Okay, good morning, everyone. It is so great to be with you all this morning. Welcome to the 2022 Montana Housing Partnership Virtual Conference. I'm Kaya Peterson. I'm the Executive Director of NeighborWorks Montana. We are so excited you are joining us this year for the Montana Housing Partnership Conference hosted by NeighborWorks Montana and Montana Housing. This is our third year doing a virtual conference, and we hope that you find it engaging, informative, and inspiring. We know that being virtual is a disappointment for many this year, but we are hopeful that next year we will be in person and glad to have a third year of our virtual conference under our belts soon in the next couple of days. To start the conference this morning, I would like to welcome Terry Brockie to share an opening blessing. Terry is the CEO of Fort Belknap Tribal Enterprises, a member of the Montana Economic Developers Association, former superintendent of schools for Blaine County, and a fluent Ani speaker. Welcome, Terry. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Jenny, hey, and thank you, Nina Stekking, to all of my relatives here on this call. It's a great honor to pray. So really want to commend and thank the organizations that all took a part of this. NeighborWorks Montana, the virtual coalition here. Housing is very, very important to our tribal peoples on all our reservations. It's really, we're all in a crisis. And it really boils down to adequate access to capital and programs to help our people thrive. And everything starts with a good warm fire, a good lodge, a good home fire. And I commend each and every one of you for your work and your dedication to bringing affordable housing in general, to all of Montana. Your time to take away. So I can't do this alone. So if you all could join me in your own way and your own way of prayer, or just make good thoughts out there into the world for a good day, really to think of those that maybe are a little bit less fortunate than we are. COVID for protection, for your families as well. So let's all pray. Only betana ha no pita what's in it dan it dots no bita woo only bean and ya yo or bean and the indicate. Need to hear but no pea in it dan and no that's no bita woo. At me no in it dan as an aquawoods COVID aquawood non in no pea in it dan no notch get gun in. At me no pea in it dan in sit sats. Ikin he saw on thought. Only betana ha in and only the hot on ni beyond not they at ni tea watts no pea in it then ni tea ni dusky and it's in no only need to heave and bean and baytho one yo nothing no in it then up in baby skeets baytho one yo in exile no Peter what's in it then on how do no only but down in no pea in it then know that's in exile on in it then nothing no in it then up in the hot sets up ni indicates you all na being in a yakin in it then nothing up be a how no ayo who ha up ni to watching in it then wow na baby skits hey dasa on underneath I hope amen. Thank you for helping me that way, and I appreciate, and it's a great honor to say a prayer, grace, as you might say, for all of you, and then good wishes that you all have a good conference, good wishes that you find good solutions for our people across Montana that just want to live the dream we all try to live. It's a challenge, it's a challenge. I'm lucky that I have my home, but it took me 22 months to get my house on my reservation. That's the challenges that we face. I was going to move to kind of give you a little personal insight. I was going to move to Helena, and it took me 6 weeks roughly to get into a house there. And it took me 22 months on my reservation because of just layers of things. And those are the challenges Native Americans have when it comes to housing. You know, just layers of government, access to capital, the trust fee land. I think those are important topics that I hope, you know, your group will discuss a little bit about and encourage our financial institutions, our CDFIs, whatever the pathway is to invest in Indian country, because there's a lot of the tribes support our local economies. So I appreciate the time and I thank you. I hope.
Thank you, Terry. What a wonderful way to start the conference this morning. It's an honor to have you here. And as Terry said, we know that there are a lot of disparities and equity challenges as we look at where housing and homeownership opportunities exist across our state. And if you are interested in participating and joining in the Native Homeownership Coalition, we encourage you to attend their breakout session today at 1 p.m., among other opportunities to engage. Terry's a wonderful leader in this space and really appreciate his blessing and words this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Terry. We have a few logistics to share with you this morning. The format for the conference this year is very similar to last year, using the Whova conference platform. The Whova site is where you can find all the session information and Zoom links. It is also where you can ask questions of conference hosts, connect with other attendees, presenters, and sponsors, post messages, create discussion topics, and participate in our leaderboard and photo contests. So, Whova, get on to that site and please participate. That's one of the places you can find all of the information you need for the next 2 days together. We do hope you actively use all of those options available to you and take advantage of all of the great engagement throughout the conference. In addition, although we are mostly virtual this year, we are hosting in-person networking events as part of the conference. Yay! In 8 locations throughout the state this evening. We can't wait to raise a glass with you and again, experience the camaraderie we share. We've all been missing that. We hope to see you tonight in Kalispell, Missoula, Helena, Great Falls, Bozeman, Butte, Billings, and Wolf Point. For more details on these, go to the agenda in Whova or the meetup section of the community tab. The best thing about this conference is all of you. As we said last year, your vast experience, your inquisitive minds, your caring hearts, and your willingness to share what you know and learn about what you don't, and your drive to always be doing more and better for the people and the communities we serve. In that spirit, we challenge you again this year to ask at least one question, post at least one resource, and share at least one bit of your own perspective or advice in a session or through the conference app. That's it. 1, 2, 3. One question, one resource, one perspective or piece of advice. It's the engagement of every one of us that will make these 2 days valuable for us all. The conference this year is hosted by Montana Housing and NeighborWorks Montana. I want to say thank you to the steering committee and all the presenters and staff who are part of this event. It's a big undertaking to put something like this together, and we appreciate all your work and input for this great 2 days we have planned together. Again, thank you all for joining us. Excited to have this time with you. I'm going to hand it over to Katie Biggs.
Hello, everybody. We are so excited you are here. I am Katie Biggs. I'm the Director of Operations at NeighborWorks Montana. Attendees, if you haven't yet, please click on the chat. I've been monitoring it this morning and it looks fantastic. Select all panelists and attendees and enter your name, organization, and the location that you're joining us from today. We will ask that you engage and share using the chat during the plenary sessions. We do have them in webinar mode, so you won't be on video or be able to speak, but please engage via the chat. During the plenaries, all participant lines are muted and only the panelists and presentations can be seen on the video. This chat is a way for introductions, engagement, and to see who's in the room. All sessions are being recorded and will be available in the Whova mobile app for 6 months and the Whova website for 3 months following the conference. There's so much incredible content, and it will be available to you in case there's something you can't attend live. If you have technical issues, please review the frequently asked questions troubleshooting tips in Whova. If you need additional help, please reach out to or text Todd Jackson. His contact information will be hitting the chat here in just a second, but you might have to scroll through a little bit because there's a lot of things hitting the chat right now. We would like to go ahead and thank our sponsors. We encourage you to visit their sponsor booths in the Whova app and to interact with them through the app. You can also see all their ads in the conference program, which includes links to their websites. We would like to recognize in particular one lead sponsor. Wells Fargo is our platinum sponsor again this year. We have 3 gold sponsors: Glacier Bank, NeighborWorks America, and the Montana Healthcare Foundation. The Montana Department of Commerce and Montana Housing are also lead sponsors. GMD is our community give back sponsor. US Bank is our award sponsor, and Enterprise Community Partners is sponsoring our People's Choice Award this year. First Interstate Bank, Montana Housing, and the Richmond Group sponsored our plenary sessions today. So thank you to all of our sponsors. We could not do this without you. As always, we invite our elected officials to address our attendees. Today, we have videos from Senator Daines and Senator Tester to share with you.
Well, hello and welcome to the NeighborWorks Statewide Housing Conference. I'd like to start by thanking you for the work you're doing to build and support Montana communities by providing affordable housing and financial counseling. Folks have discovered what we already know, and that is that Montana is the best place to live, to work, to raise a family. But we also know that this puts an unprecedented demand on the Montana housing market. Additionally, hardworking Montana families are experiencing high inflation and the crippling impacts from increasing government spending and the supply chain crisis. That's why the work you all do is so very important. I'm advocating for the modernization of the appraisal process through greater use of technology, which will help reduce associated costs and the time consumed with buying a home. I'm also fighting to restore common sense forest management practices in Montana to help level set the cost of lumber, which adds an additional challenge to the housing crisis. And as your voice in the U.S. Senate, I'll continue fighting for these common sense policies that lower costs for hardworking Montana families. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Hi, this is John Tester. I want to thank the folks at NeighborWorks Montana for inviting me to speak with you today. I've seen firsthand the positive impact organizations like NeighborWorks can have on our Montana communities. A couple months ago, I had the opportunity to visit a home in Great Falls built through the Owner Build program. And what's special about this program is that you work with community members to tackle a housing shortage while teaching valuable skills in the process. But the fact is, Montana is still suffering from an affordable housing crisis. Everywhere I go in the Treasure State, everywhere, from our most urban areas to our most rural areas, I hear about the difficulties folks are facing finding a place to live at a reasonable price. You all know better than most that lack of housing hurts our economy. It makes it difficult for small businesses to hire workers, and it puts the squeeze on working families. That's why I worked with USDA to secure millions of dollars in critical funding for rural housing and economic development. And we've gotten millions more in HUD grants out to folks across our state. Your work has never been more important. And while you all keep pushing to increase the housing supply and enlisting folks to join the workforce, I'll keep working in Washington to make sure you have the resources that you need. Know that you have my continued support. Together, we can tackle this crisis one house at a time. Thank you.
Thank you to Senator Daines and Senator Tester and all of our elected officials serving the state of Montana. We now get the privilege to hear from one of our lead sponsors, Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is a platinum sponsor for the conference for the 4th year in a row. We welcome our good friends Jane Pavick and Katie Rollison to share some remarks on behalf of Wells Fargo to us.
Hey, good morning. I'm Katie Relison, and I've been supporting Montana for almost 10 years now. And I can't believe all of the amazing housing projects and everything that's happening in Montana throughout this time frame. Wow, is all I have to say. So thank you so much for the opportunity for Jane and I to say a few words. We are truly honored to sponsor this conference and support the work that all of you do to help people in Montana find a safe and affordable place to live. I am really among some serious Montana housing celebrities. While I wish we could visit and spend time together in person, I'm still excited that we can come together virtually. Wells Fargo is very proud to be the title sponsor. As many of you know, Wells Fargo is a longtime supporter of housing programs, both across the state of Montana and nationally. We are leading affordable housing in lending and investor in home ownership and multifamily rental housing. So now I'm going to kind of just give you a little bit of the scope of what we do nationally. So in 2020, our home lending team helped more than 635,000 homeowners purchase a home or refinance an existing mortgage, and we remain the #1 commercial and multifamily servicer. In 2021, our commercial lending and investment team committed $5.65 billion of debt and equity capital. And our foundation team continued to build upon our $1 billion philanthropic commitment to address housing affordability solutions across the U.S. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jane to talk about the important work that we're doing in Montana.
Great. Thanks, Katie, and good morning to our Montana family. Katie and I have said each year that being in Montana is like coming home, even if it's a virtual homecoming this year. We are grateful to support the conference and have the opportunity to work with so many of you on a regular basis. This conference provides us the opportunity to reflect on what was accomplished over the past year and how we're going to tackle the current housing challenges we have. And I think both Terry and Senator Tester already highlighted some things that we all know so well. As I was thinking about what I was going to say today, I thought about the projects and initiatives that over the past year and previous years, that something was very clear. And it's an important fact, the reason that we, all of us, are able to make a positive impact in Montana as it relates to housing is the amazing collaborative spirit that is part of Montana's DNA. Some examples of this collaborative work over the past 4 years, which Wells Fargo has been just one of the many players involved in, and we're grateful for that. Some examples include 28 apartment homes in Dillon, 37 apartment homes in Livingston, 138 homes preserved through the ROC program, 4 rehabbed apartments for transitional housing program in Billings, substantial strides made through the Native Housing Coalition and Native Growth Fund, over 250 families assisted with down payment assistance to purchase a home, which leveraged over $41 million in first mortgage loans. We have habitat subdivisions in East Helena and Billings. And speaking of habitat, from 2014 to 2019, Wells Fargo team members helped with 15 build days on 15 different homes for habitat families throughout Montana. And during the same time, 2014 to 2019, over 2,600 individuals received homebuyer education and counseling. By no means is this a complete list of all the activities that further affordable housing options and economic activity in Montana, but none of this would have been accomplished without many of you. We at Wells Fargo are humbled and proud to stand alongside you and support you. Our support includes our time, talent, and treasure. Since 2014, we have invested over $6.5 million in activities to promote and strengthen affordable housing options. And although we won't be able to raise a glass with you guys tonight throughout Montana, know that Katie and I are with you in spirit. We'll be raising glasses in Denver and Boise. We believe that home is sanctuary and a place where we feel safe, thrived, and recharged. And we know that having a safe, healthy, and affordable place to call home is essential to lay groundwork for wellness and economic opportunity. We're truly honored to help celebrate the individuals, agencies, and projects and programs that will be recognized today and tomorrow during the conference. You do this important work day in and day out and bring sanctuary and stability to so many across Montana. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention sending our thoughts and our blessings to all the people who are being impacted by the flooding this week. We know that's tough. And so just wanted to say that as well. Just always, we're grateful for the opportunity to support you and work with you all. And just really appreciate everything that you do on a regular basis. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Katie Biggs, but have a great conference, and hopefully we can all take away at least 1 or 2 nuggets and also contribute the 3 things that Kaya asked us to do. So thank you, Katie. Thank you, Kaya, and have a good conference.
Well, thank you, Katie and Jane. We love you guys. We can't wait to have you in person next year so we can raise a glass with you guys. But thank you for your never-ending support of Montana, NeighborWorks Montana, and everyone in this state. You guys have been such a great partner, and we appreciate your support. Our plenary session this morning is being sponsored by First Interstate Bank. Thank you to them for their support as well. Next, I am pleased to welcome Andrea Davis, who will be moderating the opening plenary session. Andrea is the Executive Director of Homeward and is a current chair of the Montana Housing Coalition. The Montana Housing Coalition advocates for safe and decent homes for all Montanans. Welcome, Andrea. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Katie. I appreciate it. And I'm going to do the first technology snafu, which is to say, is my writing on my screen backwards? Or is it?
No,
can
you're
everybody
good.
see it? Is it good? Okay.
You're good.
Zoom, you think we'd all know how to do it exactly right from the go. But anyway, it's really wonderful to see everybody virtually. And thank you again to all of the conference organizers for doing an incredible job of bringing us together. As mentioned, I'm Andrea Davis, the Executive Director of Homeward and the Chair of the Montana Housing Coalition. I want to thank Senator Tester and Senator Daines for their welcoming messages, their dedication to Montana and public service. This plenary session is dedicated to the state's role in housing affordability. As mentioned, the Housing Coalition advocates for safe and decent homes for all Montanans. We are a member-based organization that is made up of developers, housing agencies, local businesses, and city and county governments all across the state. We advocate for housing policy to benefit all Montanans. Montana communities are stronger when everyone can afford safe, healthy homes, yet Montana rental and home listing prices are rising so rapidly, it's taking our breath away. It's no secret that skyrocketing rental and real estate, the skyrocketing rental and real estate market is challenging for all kinds of Montanans. The cost of rentals and homes for sale continues to increase at alarming rates in comparison to incomes. Local workers, seniors, veterans, and families are trying to keep their homes and pay for other necessities. Businesses are striving to provide great service and retain employees on local wages. Montanans are known for being determined, enterprising, and community-minded. We do our best when we use our strengths and come together for a common good. Community challenges call for community-based solutions, and that really is what we are here to talk about today. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speakers for this panel this morning. To start us out, we will hear from Governor Gianforte in a recorded message about his vision for addressing the challenges we're facing with Montana's housing market. Before we go to the video, I just want to mention who all is joining us today on this panel. Representative Dave Fern, who represents District 5 in the Whitefish area, and Representative Tom Welch, who represents District 72 in the Dillon area. Both of these men are 2 veteran legislators who have championed housing legislation in the Montana Legislature. Both have served in the House for 3 consecutive terms, so since 2017 forward, and they have advanced from the primary and will be on the ballot in November of 2022. Kelly Lynch is the Executive Director of the Montana League of Cities and Towns, where she focuses on collaboration between public agencies, the private sector, and elected officials. Kelly has more than 20 years of experience as an attorney and local government advocate. She served previously as the Community Development Division Administrator and the Project Legal Counsel for the Montana Department of Commerce. And last, I just want to make sure Kevin's on. Yes, he is. Great. I just didn't see his name before I started. And Kevin Gartland. Kevin is the executive director of the Whitefish Chamber of Commerce and has more than 25 years experience as a Chamber of Commerce executive in 3 different states. He has taken a lead in Whitefish's efforts to address its critical workforce housing and staffing shortages, serving on the city's Strategic Housing Plan Implementation Committee since its formation in 2017. So we have a nice variety of different perspectives on the panel this morning. And with that, I am hoping we can go ahead and cue up the governor's video.
Hi, Greg Gianforte here. Let me begin by saying thank you for all the important work you do on behalf of Montanans. Serving as Montana's governor and working alongside the legislature, we have started to unleash the engine of job creation, economic growth, and business development that for too long just sputtered along. Thanks to hardworking Montanans, our unemployment rate has fallen to the lowest rate ever recorded in Montana. By opening Montana for business, we have more Montanans working now than ever before in our state's history. Despite our successes, Montana isn't shielded from the challenges our nation faces. Nationwide and here at home, demand for housing has outstripped supply, driving up costs and making it harder for Montana families to become homeowners and achieve the American dream. With more Americans recognizing Montana's outstanding quality of life and realizing the opportunities that our state brings, we've experienced strong population growth and an increased demand for housing. There's no doubt that supply-demand imbalance in the housing market requires urgent attention. That's why days like today are important. As you come together to share the successes you enjoy, talk about the challenges you face, and continue finding ways to create better outcomes for more Montanans. But there's no magic wand we can wave, and there's no one simple solution to the issue. We recognize the state's regulatory scheme is in need of an overhaul. We're committed to getting rid of that wet blanket and cutting red tape by reforming, rolling back, and repealing unnecessary, burdensome regulations, tightening the housing supply. That's why on my second day in office, we launched the Red Tape Relief Task Force. Lieutenant Governor Kristen Juras is leading the charge, conducting a top-to-bottom review of regulations in every state agency. The Red Tape Relief Task Force is leaving no stone unturned, from bureaucratic processes to permitting hurdles. As the Lieutenant Governor reminds me often, there's no quick fix after decades of lip service to red tape relief. Effective long-term solutions are part of a marathon, not a sprint. But I can attest the Lieutenant Governor is keeping a record-breaking pace to cut back the thicket of unnecessary burdensome red tape. But we must also ensure Montana workers have the tools they need to succeed in building capacity. Because if we're going to ramp up housing capacity, we're going to need skilled workers to do it. We are empowering our workforce with those in-demand skills. We created the Montana Trades Education Credit, which will boost trades education by funding as many as 1,000 trade scholarships each and every year. The credit is ensuring Montanans have access to training and education to acquire and refine in-demand skills. Using the credit, employers and employees can decide on training that is best for their business and for the employee. To expand our highly skilled workforce, we're modernizing our apprenticeship system as well. Now a journeyman may supervise more apprentices, replacing the former outdated, inefficient system of a couple journeymen supervising each single apprentice. Bring us in line with neighboring states, this reform has already dramatically increased apprenticeship opportunities for hardworking Montanans, with hundreds of apprenticeships getting the trades education they need and want. This much-needed reform will help us meet the current and future workforce needs. As we develop our workforce, we're focused on building critical public-private partnerships to close the skilled labor gap so we can ramp up housing capacity. We're working with our 2- and 4-year colleges to help Montana businesses meet their workforce needs. In fact, we created a position at the Montana Department of Labor and Industry for that express purpose. There's much to be done, and we'll continue to face this issue head on and with widespread input from Montanans. Together, friends, we'll continue working towards our shared goal to make Montana an even better place to live, work, raise a family, and achieve the American dream. Friends, I'm enthusiastic about what we can accomplish together for Montana's future, so we can leave our state better than we found it for our kids and grandkids. I wish you all great success at this conference. Through your continued partnership, I have full confidence we'll meet the challenges of today while building a stronger and more prosperous tomorrow. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me for anything. My door is always open.
All right, great. Thank you to Governor Gianforte for your work and the administration's work on policies that support the training of Montana's labor force and tax credits for Montana employers to help build up that labor force and review of outdated regulations. So if I could go ahead and have the panelists join us, I see Representative Fern here. Hello. And I think what I'll do is just start a round robin of questions to you all. And so I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Representative Fern. And the question I'm going to ask each of you is, can you describe what you see as the state's role in home affordability? Representative Fern, did you hear me there? Maybe. Maybe not. I'm gonna, oh.
I heard you. The question is, do you hear me? Because I have kind of spotty reception right now. I don't think it's your fault.
We do hear you.
So are you hearing me? Nod your head if you do.
Yes. Indeed.
Okay. The question, I believe, was what is the role of government in assessing or trying to solve some of the housing crisis needs we have? I would say really our role is to assure various advocates within the field, from diverse groups in the coalition to financial institutions to MACO and the League, that we have the proper statutes, the proper tools to be able to enable different strategies to solve this problem. And just to name a few, and we can talk about them in detail later, as you know, we have coal trust, we have tax credits, we have land trusts, we have zoning policies that we're reviewing, we have mobile park ownerships. Those are just a quick review of some of the strategies we can take. And then we also have secondary issues that impact housing security. We have our tax policy, impact of property taxes on ownership and renters. We have childcare issues. We have education issues. So I think all those issues are things that we at one time or another take up in the legislature, and hopefully some have a positive impact on lessening the housing insecurity in the state.
Thank you, Representative Fern. I appreciate that. Representative Welch, would you be willing to share your thoughts on what you, or describe what you see as the state's role in home affordability?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. I think it's important, and the governor alluded to this a little bit, that government gets out of the way of the public and private sector. Sometimes we think we have a better idea. Sometimes we think we have a way to do something in the legislature. And sometimes we listen to what we hear at home, and sometimes we don't. And his point about Lieutenant Governor working on the regulatory burden, and I've spent a little time talking with the Lieutenant Governor about that. She had hoped to have that all done. She started, I think, as the governor said, in January. She hoped to have that done by this coming January. She told me there is no way. We have such a regulatory burden on all sectors, but housing is definitely one of them. It gets in the way of doing things that should be done on their own and in a more timely manner. So I think that's my way of saying it. That, I mean, I think the government has a role, but I think sometimes we cross the line. The other thing I just throw out at you is we're talking about some of these things and coming up. We've seen great growth and tremendous growth in the state. Even though we don't see it overall in the population, I mean, we see some increase in numbers, but we see houses being built every place and people looking for housing. And that growth has really gotten away from us at this point, unexpectedly. I mean, I don't think any of us saw it coming very quickly. So I think that's an issue that we've got out there. We just need to manage it better and do what we can to help people there.
Thank you, Representative Welch. Appreciate that. Ms. Lynch, Kelly, would you go next and describe what you see as the state's role in home affordability?
Yeah. Hi, Andrea. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here today. You heard Governor Gianforte talk about burdensome regulations, and that's really kind of where local governments have come into this conversation about, zoning, subdivision, review process, how long it takes, building codes. And so I appreciate being on this panel to kind of talk about those things. And I know you want me to talk a little bit at some point about the land use working group and what we're kind of trying to do with modernizing our state statutes. But I will touch kind of specifically on some of the things that I think the state could do. As again, you heard the governor say, there is no one simple solution. We can fix all the zoning regulations we want, and it's not going to be a panacea for getting the kind of housing we need to see. I know that the building industry talks all the time about the 5 Ls, and I think there are some things in each of those areas that the state can be doing to help support housing. As you guys know, the lumber prices are off the charts. They have been very volatile over the last couple of years. We're seeing them go down now, but there's no guarantee they aren't going to go back up. Appreciate hearing Senator Daines dealing with that issue on the federal level. I've seen some data points that lumber has caused more than $20,000 to the price of a new home over just the past year. And we're seeing that in other building materials as well, lumber, but also steel, concrete, gypsum, and now fuel. So all of those things lead to increases in the cost of housing. But I want to point out that those things have the same impact on the infrastructure that local governments need to serve new housing. So roads, water, sewer, all of those things require the same materials and the same labor that's causing problems in the market. One of the things that I've thought about in terms of how can the state help in building codes, you've heard some discussions amongst folks nationally that our building code requirements need to be looked at very, very carefully. Are there things, and maybe even just on an emergency, gap basis, that we can exempt from building code requirements until we get to the point where we catch up on getting the number of units in place? So that's something I'd like to see the state do, is really look through those building codes, be very specific. They can take those national, international codes and kind of pare them down to the bare minimum. I'd like to see that happen. I do want to point out that there's a real difference between what the state requires in building codes outside of municipalities. Essentially, if you are a residential unit from 1 to 4, you do not have to meet building codes at all. You don't have to get a building permit. You are completely exempt. When you're in the municipalities, that's not the case. So, it's better to get more people on the infrastructure systems because it's cheaper overall for everyone. You can spread that cost over a lot of people. But when those kinds of differences happen, it makes it very difficult to convince builders to work in the municipalities. I won't touch much on labor. That's another issue. It sounds like the governor's doing a lot of work in that area, and I'm really happy to hear that. I would encourage, all of us to come together and see, what can cities do to help in the area of skilled labor and training. Is there specific things in a community that folks need to see? And I encourage you to work with your mayor and other elected officials to have that conversation locally. And then land and laws. We know that tax reform is going to be front and center in the next legislative session. And I think it's important to recognize that there are taxing strategies that can make huge strides in financing supporting housing. We can look at taxing underutilized and vacant property. At this point, it's of no value whatsoever to do any redevelopment of those properties because we don't tax them for their potential development value. Can we encourage development of public lands with housing or as housing trusts held by the state? I really feel like we are in a brave new world with a lot of unknowns. It's a workforce situation we've never seen, market forces we've never seen, people working from home, but living in Montana and working in Atlanta. So I feel like everything should be on the table. We should have conversations about any kind of innovative, crazy idea anyone can come up with, and really take them seriously and see if it's something that might work. So that's my opening salvo. There you go.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly. Really appreciate it. All right. Last but not least, Kevin, would you please share what you see as the state's role in home affordability?
Well, Andrea, how are you? Good morning, and good morning to everybody else that's out there online. I hope you're all safe with all the wonderful storm weather. I had an inch of snow on my garden this morning. Doesn't talk about housing, but it's my house. So first off, I'm no expert on housing or anything else. I'm just a Chamber of Commerce guy, and you can describe Chamber of Commerce guys as the ultimate jack of all trades, master of none. But about 7 years ago, our chamber decided it needed to get involved in housing. I've been in the business for 25 years. We've never really taken a lead in any of the chambers I've worked with on housing. But 7 years ago, our members told us that the lack of affordable housing for our workforce was the #1 thing affecting their ability to staff up properly, to grow their businesses. And as a result, really, it became pretty much accepted that we needed to deal with this problem. So we've gone through a lot of iterations here. We have put together a strategic plan for the city. We've spent the last 5 years trying to implement that plan. But I'll tell you that unfortunately, at times, it seems like the legislature is doing its best to dismantle that plan for us. One of the keystones of our plan was what we called our Legacy Homes program. It's an inclusionary zoning program that requires developers of new subdivisions to include 25, or in our case, 20% of the homes or apartments in that subdivision would need to be deed restricted for long-term affordability. That program was just beginning to bear fruit last year in 2021. We actually had a $500,000 in lieu payment that was helping us to develop some townhomes in the downtown area. But it was struck down when the legislature passed HB 259 last year in 2021 during the session, made programs like ours illegal, and pretty much set us back to square one. That's not the only toolbox that we don't have in our toolkit that other communities and other states have used effectively for decades to provide housing for their low to moderate income workers. Annexation policies. In Montana law, we can use it, put together a development agreement as part of our annexation policies, but I'll tell you that our city attorney has advised us not to, or to be very, very careful in moving that direction, because she's afraid it would spur a similar reaction to what we got from the legislature last year with our IZ program. The same can be said for residential or commercial linkage programs, which are in use throughout the Mountain West and resort towns like Whitefish. And then there's the real estate transfer tax or fee, which is illegal in Montana, but is legal and implemented in several different states. And in some states where it's not legal, we're seeing our realtors and our brokers participate voluntarily in a real estate transfer tax. Because I think that if there's one thing that we can all agree on, and I can look out my window right here and I could go up to any one of those people and say, what's the biggest problem in Whitefish? And they would tell me housing. So maybe the best thing the legislature could do, and some other folks have kind of averred to this, would be just to get out of the way and let our local communities make the local decisions they need to make to deal with local problems. We can talk about money, and there's all kinds of, I imagine we'll talk about money here in a little bit, but that's kind of my 2 cents worth. Our folks here have invested a lot of time and a lot of energy in trying to put together a program that would work for Whitefish. It is not the type of program that I would recommend in a lot of cities. I've said this before, I'm Chamber of Commerce guys don't typically go out asking you to tax their members to build something for somebody else. In this instance, in this occasion, and this has been the occasion for the last 9 years now, we need to do something. We need to do something about this program. We need to do it now. And it's going to take all the resources and all the ideas we can. So if not get out of the way, then I would just look for our state representatives and our government leaders just to be a little more flexible and be open to some new ideas they haven't been open to in the past.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing your perspective. I really appreciate hearing from everybody. And there's some really great questions coming in. And before we launch into some of those, I wanted to hear from folks, and I'll start with our representatives again. So Representative Fern, I will start with you and ask if you could share with us what you think might be some of our greatest opportunities in the coming 2023 legislative session. We know that we've got a surplus of revenue. There's a number of circumstances for that. I'll just mention that, you know, the state has been the recipient of federal recovery funds, and all of this economic boon that has resulted largely from massive influx of new folks and just home prices increasing. There's a lot of reasons for it, but we also know that the general fund actually has some additional dollars in it this year. There's some policy decisions that can be made at the legislative level and will be made. And I'm curious what you think is our greatest opportunity in 2023.
Thanks for the question. We have a bill that dealt with a state tax credit program that sort of mimics the federal tax credit program, where the credits are awarded, commoditized, and projects are built. And you of all people are familiar with it, as the organization has managed some of these projects. And we just finished one in Whitefish. And so increasing the opportunity for these types of lower income eligible for working folks, apartments, it's just a little piece of the solution. The bill passed last session with more than 80 votes in the House, and that's to establish a state tax credit program. It managed through the Senate, and then it was vetoed. And you know, my hope is that we pay attention to the letter outlining the problems with the bill and from the perspective of the executive, and come forward with a replacement bill. And what one way to approach it is we had it indexed to federal funding, and maybe we consider putting a cap on it so we know we have fixed expenditures moving out. But it's just one small example of a bill that would make a difference, and had you know, it was supported by the majority sponsored. And the second issue would be to revisit a bill that didn't make it through, which was to reauthorize loans from our coal trust fund. And that really was helped with putting packages together for projects, some of it rehabbing current affordable housing projects throughout the state. And I think to some degree, we have to do, or I have to do a better job of having fellow legislators understand how the Coal Trust works, how a loan impacts the fund, how the money comes back and actually makes a little bit of money for the fund. And so it's a win-win situation. So those are two, I would say that a final bill that's just totally different that failed last year was a bill, I believe, put forward by Senator Jacobson. And I mean, this sounds like a very minor change, but it took the Montana Fund, which is housed in the Montana State Board of Housing, and changed it from exclusively being used as a loan program to also allowing grants to be given. And I think the potential of the Montana Fund is as follows. It's something that can grow and maybe can reach the imagination of donors to realize that there is a conduit for funding to assist housing at a statewide level. So I think that's another bill from a different perspective that we need to introduce. And I would finally remind folks that we as legislators, Representative Welch and myself, we really need your input. We're not experts, and you have to make sure you're not operating in silos, I guess. And obviously we're together today, so you're trying not to operate by silos. But if there's ideas from financial institutions or advocacy groups or from the league's membership, it needs to come down. And I know Tom and I are both willing to take on responsibilities and distribute bills so that we can get the needs from the experts as to how this system can work better and put forward potential solutions by way of bills during the next legislative session. That's enough.
Fabulous. Thank you, Representative Fern. I really appreciate that. Appreciate your insights and our work together in the past sessions and as we go forward. And same to you, Representative Welch. We've worked together as we've maneuvered some, as we advocated for the legislation that both yourself and Representative Fern, like the Coal Loan Fund that was created in 2019. And Representative Fern sponsored that in the House Tax Committee, and Representative Welch, you were on that committee, and we were on the phone in sort of 11th hour trying to make sure we kept it alive, and you did. So I just want to give everybody kind of a behind the scenes. These folks work really hard and all hours of the evening sometimes to see to it that these negotiations work. So back to the question, Representative Welch, what do you see as our greatest opportunity in 2023 session to impact home affordability?
Let me just throw a couple of other things out first. Representative Fern mentioned, and I think one of the things that a lot of us realize and we work hard at it is it really doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican or if you're from Whitefish or Dillon. We have housing issues. We have a lot of issues, and we need to work together on those. And a number of us do. There's some that do not, and they have their various reasons for that. But I enjoy the things that Representative Fern and I work together on, and we've talked about a couple of things for the next session that maybe we can. And let me talk a little bit about a couple of things that were mentioned. In addition to being the vice chair of the tax committee, as is Representative Fern, I also serve in the interim on the revenue interim committee. You talk about surplus revenue. Yes, there is some surplus revenue out there. Concern is to a certain degree, it's one-time money, that federal money. There's a real hesitancy within the legislature to create programs with one-time money. We can supplement things. We can fix infrastructure, that road out in front of you. We can fix that. We can fix bridges. But to start new programs, how do we continue them if we only have one-time money? So I know people say, oh, you got a lot of money, let's spend it, let's do this or that. There's a real hesitancy to see that happen, and I don't see it happening, honestly. However, we do have general fund increases. People are working more so than ever. We have more people working. Those people are paying taxes, whether it's income tax, whether it's property tax or whatever. So we are gaining some revenue there that will be available to look at some things and go from there. One of the things that we're looking hard at, I would not be surprised to see this, but don't hold me to it. Montana has a two-legged stool when it comes to taxes. We have income tax and property tax. We do not have sales tax. Montana's 1972 Constitution limits the sales tax to 4%. I would tell you that there has been, and I know that some local communities have resort taxes and those type of things. I would tell you that there is some discussion at this point about a 1% sales tax with the funding going to modify property taxes. Whether that gets off the ground, where it goes, I have no idea at this point. I would just throw that out to you that is being discussed. Representative Fern mentioned the coal tax funds and where we're at there. We need to review that. That will be reviewed. One of the things that has hurt the coal tax funds is the decline in interest rates out there. And so we have this large fund, and we used to be enjoying higher interest rates. And yes, they've raised a little bit here recently. But I mean, when they were down to 2% and 3%, our income in the coal trust funds were impacted, which in turn limited our ability to do some other things going forward. So as we look at, things going forward, I think you're going to hear discussions about reducing property tax. You're probably going to hear some discussion about some sort of a sales tax. Montana's one of 5 states that doesn't have a sales tax. You're going to hear some talk about maybe looking at how the coal tax funds are spent and divided out there. So,
Representative Welch, thank you for that insight. It's really very helpful, and I'm looking forward to working with you on some ideas for how we don't necessarily stand up new programs, but that we could help maybe some existing ones move along. And like we have that Housing Montana Fund, maybe this is our opportunity to really seed that for some revolving loan fund opportunities there. So,
and lastly, I would agree with Representative Fern, and we talked about this. We need you folks' input. And sometimes we need to hear it 2 or 3 times because we didn't get it the first time. But you people are down working it. And we're supposed to be experts on everything. We're not, So the input we get from people like the people at this conference is very, very critical to us. And sometimes it doesn't hurt to tell us 2 or 3 times because we're busy and going 7 different directions at a time. But it is meaningful to us if we hear from people back home how this impacts you, what your ideas are at fixing it, and then let us take it from there and work with you and see if we can't get something done. Sometimes we can't. That's just the reality of it. I'll tell you this real quick and I'll get off. The number we talk to people at the legislature about is 51, 26, and 1. You have to have 51 House members vote for a bill. You have to have 26 senators vote for a bill. You got to have the governor sign it. So those are the numbers we play with the legislature.
Excellent. Appreciate that call to action at the end. I'll make sure that folks get a link. We'll put a link in the chat as well about how to access the Montana Legislature website. It is very user-friendly, and you can get on there daily and find out what's happening with certain bills, the status of those bills. You can see how your representatives are, what they voted on, what they've sponsored. Very, very helpful. Okay, before we switch on to some questions from the audience, I do want to make sure our other panelists have the opportunity to answer this question. And so, Kelly, will you share with us what you see as some of the greatest opportunities in the 2023 legislative session?
Yeah, I think, this is probably a good spot for me to talk a little bit about what the land use working group is doing, because I think having having our land use statutes modernized and updated is something that's been long overdue. The locals can only do what is allowed within the state statutes in terms of growth policy, zoning, and subdivision. And so that's a place where I think the state can have an immense amount of at least aspirational goals in terms of what they'd like to see at the local level. One of the things that is, I think, the biggest problem at the local level is what we call NIMBYism. And I know you guys probably know this term and talk about it a lot. But we have this fabulous constitutional protection of the public's right to know and participate. It's one of the only ones in the country that is enshrined in our Constitution. But there are some real downsides to that. And I like to think it's kind of the way we've structured how we deal with the public's right to know and participate when it comes to land use and planning. We need to make a decision as Montanans about balancing between how much input a neighbor gets to have on what is being built versus the community and social advantages to having housing be built. And one cannot trump the other. And so I'd like to see, as part of modernizing our statutes, getting us to a closer balance about when and how it's appropriate for the public to have input into what the impacts of development will be. And what we're trying to do on the land use working group is push almost all of that up to where it should take place, which is the growth policy and the comprehensive planning stage. The local government should take a really long time to gather all of the data, analyze all of the opportunities and constraints in a jurisdiction, in a planning area, have intensive, extensive public review and participation in that process. And then once that becomes implemented in regulations, you identify a land use map, where the areas are that should be developed, and you've mitigated against impacts of those developments through making those decisions at that community-wide level. After that, the site-specific development planning should be a pretty quick process. All of those things have been discussed. And the way we have it right now, we've got, the subdivision review basically duplicates all of that analysis again and makes the developer go through the process of talking about every single type of impact that might occur. So those are the kinds of things that we are looking at doing through the modernization of the land use and planning statutes. I think that's an important piece. I will also just mention the SRF grant programs, loan programs. They are a federal program, so there's not much we can do about it. But back in the 1980s, the feds decided that the SRF programs, which pays for a lot of water and sewer programs, is limited to existing development. So you cannot use it to extend new services out to new development. That's a problem. We need to pay for those kinds of things. They're very expensive, and SRF is something that needs to pay for that. And so I think the federal level needs to look at that, but it has trickled down to state grant and loan programs with the same attitude and the same approach. And that is something that the state can deal with. So MSEP, RRGL, any of those local housing programs and infrastructure programs need to revisit those kinds of limitations on their infrastructure programs.
Excellent. Those are really tangible examples, and as well as the two representatives gave very tangible examples. I appreciate that. And Kevin, you just said just now, hey, I'm not a state government expert here. And so not to put you on the spot, but what do you see? What do you see as our opportunity here in 2023?
Kelly stole my thunder. I had in my notes right there. The number one thing they could do would be to outlaw NIMBYism. Keep your hands off of our development programs and outlaw NIMBYism. You know, we had a, and actually it's gone beyond NIMBYism, because I went to the economic forecast that the state chamber put on a couple of weeks ago, and they have a new term called bananas. Have you heard that one yet? Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anybody. That's what it is. It's bananas out there right now. We had a large project proposed for Whitefish. Would have been about 300 apartments, about 70 of those deed restricted, affordable, plus a donation of land where we could have built another 60 units on it, but it happened to be in the view space of one of the most affluent areas of town. And the professional NIMBYs came out, armed with lawyers and all kinds of wonderful things. And they weren't at all shy about threatening to withdraw the philanthropic support of all of our nonprofits in Whitefish if the city fathers saw fit to approve this project. So it kind of upped NIMBYism to a new level. Somewhere close to extortion, I guess. I don't know, but they're very interesting stuff. But we need to find a way to integrate housing into our communities in a way it's never going to be immune to those folks who show up for public hearings religiously and as a pseudo profession. But we need to find a way to clean up our processes a little bit and be able to approve some projects that need to be approved. If you really want to think outside the box, I agree with everything, by the way, that Dave and Representative Welch said. If you really want to think outside the box, one of those areas that we're seeing increased tax revenue is the bed tax. I don't know about hotel rates where you are, but I have hotels in my town that 5 years ago we were getting where they were going for about $179 a night, and this year for the 4th of July they'll be going for $629 a night. Same product that was there 5 years ago. There's a lot more bed tax out there, and there's got to be a way that we can provide beds for the folks who actually make our economy tick from that. So that's my outside the box idea for today, Andrea.
Kevin, thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't mention here just the number of folks that are in roles like yours or in other economic development leadership roles who have basically said there are two issues that have come to the surface as the #1 issues that are affecting the ability for existing businesses to attract and keep good employees, and then clearly expand, but then also businesses that want to relocate here. And those are homes that their workers can afford and childcare. Yeah. And it's a new day when you see economic development plans addressing what for a long time would be considered social policies. Mm-hmm. And they are squarely smack in the middle of Montana's economic prosperity. And I just want to recognize Whitefish's efforts in terms of putting a plan in place. I want to go to some audience questions, and then I do want to, maybe if we have time, come back to you, Kevin, to ask ways in which folks in their community can inspire some of those planning conversations that happen amongst the business and local government. So Katie, would you mind queuing up some questions from the audience? We have some really good ones. I can see them in the chat.
Some fantastic questions. So the first one I'm going to ask, and this can go to whoever you feel like it needs to go to. We hear a great deal about urban renewal, but what about rural renewal across Montana? It has been disproportionately difficult to find housing investment in small communities, which applies negative pressure on hiring and building our communities from the ground up.
So this is a rural question, and I'm wondering, there's interplay here, of course, between resources that urban areas have, like urban renewal districts, redevelopment authorities, those kinds of things. And Kelly, I'm looking to you as somebody that really has a broad understanding of the different structures of government, both locally and at the state level, and wondering if you could shed some light on this question.
Yeah, I mean, urban renewal districts are something that was developed in the 1950s, 60s to basically redevelop kind of those white flighted areas in downtown urban areas, to redevelop them, revitalize them, get investors interested in coming back to those kind of historic downtowns. By their nature, the financing mechanism of urban renewal is tax increment financing. And the idea behind tax increment financing in a nutshell is you freeze the property taxes at the levels they are when there is blight. And then anything that grows over time, because you reinvest those increment funds back into that district to encourage reinvestment, anything that comes up in the value of the property, that increment of the tax value, eventually goes back to all of the taxing entities after 15 years. It can be up to 40 years in Montana. And that's basically a function of bonding. There's also TEDs, which are, gosh, I'm not going to remember what it stands for. I'm sure somebody out there knows, but essentially it's for development of greenfields out in rural areas where you want to develop areas for commercial development, but there's no infrastructure to it. And so you need to help pay for the infrastructure. So a similar rural approach to it. The problem with these in terms of housing is that housing doesn't drive huge property values increases. And so typically what you're looking to do is develop commercial revitalization with tax increment that then ends up going back to the taxing entities after that time period. So you can spend that money certainly on housing and develop a housing. It's just that your goal is to drive tax revenue, and housing is not the best place to drive tax revenue.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And, you know, one of the observations I have wearing my homeward hat and doing the work we do across the state of Montana, I do see just how varied different localities are in their capacity, where they are in terms of planning documents and where there's opportunity for community input, but ideally really setting themselves up to leverage local land use and then potentially mixed use with commercial and home development in a way that can actually really help, I think, not only spur economy of scale, right? So one of the big issues we all know is infrastructure. And so for rural communities in particular, because of just the challenge and cost of infrastructure development, really catalyzing these things together ultimately may be what's necessary, but that is really about local capacity in a lot of ways, and also political will to some degree. And so I'm going to come back to some audience questions, but I'm going to jump over to Kevin really quick and talk about political will really quick from community's perspective. You know, we actually get this question a lot, even here at Homeward, which is like, where do we start? Where do we start? You know, I've had large employers from a small community come to me and say, I don't want to carry the burden of basically developing our community's housing strategy. I don't have time to do that. I'm running a business. So where do we start, and how do we get people to meet with heads and hearts at the table to come up with a plan?
Well, we came up with a plan through a governmental process, but I will tell you that the plans that are most effective right now are the ones that my business owners are doing on their own. You said, how do you get up? How do you start? We've been starting for 7 years now. We're still, you folks worked with us, Andrea, on the LITEC project and on the snow lot as well. So, we've got a couple things. I'll tell you, the folks on our steering committee feel extremely frustrated that we haven't been able to move the ball farther and faster. But that's not the way the process works. And so what we've seen in Whitefish is I've seen business owners get frustrated with the pace at which government works and basically take things into their own hands. And I've got folks, the ski area has always provided housing for a certain number of its employees. I would say there are 6 hotels in town that now provide housing for a certain percentage of their employees. I know there are 2 small restaurateurs who have gone into partnership to buy the old alternative high school building and turn that into dormitory for their employees. I have another restaurant owner who has rented, I think this year he's rented 6 houses and townhomes, and then he works with other small business people and sublets them on a master leasing basis. And he underwrites his employees' rent anywhere from $200 to $300, $400 a month. It's worth it to him to pay that investment to have the staff. Otherwise, the doors are closed. Dave, you're here in Whitefish. Last summer was the worst I've ever seen it. The busiest summer I've ever seen, one of the busiest summers I've ever seen, but nary a restaurant in town was open for their entire operating schedule. We have folks that were shut down for breakfast or only open for dinner or closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And, you know, you're leaving money on the table when you do that because you can't get employees because they don't have a place to live. So I really think that, you know, the key to this is keeping the pedal to the metal at the state level, at our local government level, and we're doing things there too that we can talk about. But really, business owners are realizing that part of the investment they have to make in their business is housing for their employees. Otherwise, they got to be willing to pay another $10 an hour to get folks to drive here from. I don't even know where they would drive from anymore. Everybody has the same problems we do, right? Anybody out there doesn't have these problems? It's a tough situation, no easy answers, but we all have to keep kicking it.
That's driving from Eureka. As you may know, we have school personnel driving from Eureka, and Kevin would know that's a dangerous drive. But I would say that's an example. What Kevin was saying about the involvement of the private sector in this is something I'm really interested in, and it's certainly a category, a tool to help solve the problem. And I really support businesses investing in this. But from the standpoint of the legislature, this would be something, you know, are there incentives that we are not offering that would help this situation? And if so, I think, you know, Representative Welch and myself would really need to know, well, if we can tweak this tax policy of assistance or dollars back, because maybe a few dollars back will offer great savings in the future and keeps jobs alive and businesses open, which in the big picture helps this state and this community. So again, assistance, suggestions to legislators on this topic will be helpful moving into the next session.
Great questions.
Yeah,
we have a couple questions specifically for Representative Fern and Representative Welch. There's been a lot of conversation in the chat around the tax on marijuana. It said, what about the tax on marijuana? I've heard there's a lot of money in the general fund from that. Is there any that can be used for housing from that fund particularly?
Do you want to start that off, Tom?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. It's been discussed. It's still being discussed at this point. I think as most of you have seen, marijuana sales has been bigger than a lot of people anticipated on the recreational end. I had the opportunity here a couple months ago to, along with a handful of other legislators, a marijuana operation from seed to sales. Quite interesting. As many of you know, we have a sizable tax on recreational marijuana, 20%. There are some dollars there, certainly, and those are being talked about. And, you know, property tax relief was talked about in that arena. Whether it comes about or not, I'm not sure at this point, but it's out there.
I would weigh in by saying we had a small bill, but I think an important concept bill towards the end of the session, and we heard it in the House, and it's basically assisting with some school funding, what's called the guaranteed tax base, which is sort of a sliding scale in a school district's reaching its base budget based on the taxable value of a district from throughout the state. And so there is a proportion, and I think it's rather modest, of dollars from sales of recreational marijuana going into that. And I think the model is to sort of increase it over the years. I think that's I think that's an excellent way to use it. I would say that, you know, when we passed a big bill, a massive bill last session on how we're going to implement this. And at this point, it's this whole concept, this whole subject is in its infancy. And so I think it's sort of stay tuned. We're still trying to figure out some of the law enforcement needs, some of the regulatory needs, because when you have states doing this on their own, absent the federal government, every state has to sort of reinvent the process. And the whole testing procedure distribution procedure is very expensive. And the second thing I would say is to remind folks in your county that you do have a 3% local option tax availability. And local option taxes, as Tom would know, is one of my favorite topics. And we don't have that in the Flathead, but many counties are implementing it, and it can be used in creative ways. So, and I'm really open-minded to how we might be using the 20% marijuana tax and how it might help general fund issues.
Thank you, Representative Fern. Would you expand on the parameters of the local option sales tax, the 3%? Is that available for any size community in the state of Montana? And what do they need to do to make it happen?
Well, it's really eligible, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, for counties that have passed, who voted in favor of it. So if you're a county that's voted in favor of it and you don't have that at the county level yet, then I would say that you need to contact your commissioners and see if they would move it forward. Request, it needs to be voted in by the electorate. And so far, I believe there are quite a few counties that have voted it in, have stipulated uses. And I would say one of the big uses, big needs in counties is law enforcement. Is that, another issue we looked at in local government is just that great difficulty counties are having with all kinds of infrastructure needs and essential services, especially at law enforcement and emergency services, and the competitiveness of law enforcement from municipalities and counties. So that's a need I think counties are really very cognizant of, and looking at any creative dollars they can get to help alleviate that problem.
I would just jump in, and I'll use Beaverhead County as an example. We did not vote in favor of recreational marijuana in Beaverhead County. Part of my district involves Butte Silver Bow County. That portion of my county did vote for, or my precinct did vote for it, my district. But right now, Beaverhead County does not collect that 3%. We would have to put it on the ballot, as if several counties did here recently. And a couple of counties, if I'm not mistaken, voted to take it off, I think. And it passed maybe in one of them, I can't remember which one. But Beaverhead County, for example, we would have to put that on the ballot and pass that before we could start it. And other counties are in that same box. It's, I know our local county commissioners have talked about it because they visited with me about, looking at ways to help them with some of the costs and needs they have. So it's still out there.
There may be more willingness than ever at this point, given just how much the demand is for some alternative resources to fund some of the great ideas, and a lot of the great ideas that we're seeing in this chat. Kelly, I saw that your hand was up. Did you want to make a comment?
I just wanted to jump in on the marijuana tax. I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to suggest to two legislators that the counties are really the only ones allowed to put it on the ballot. And I know we have several municipalities who would very much like to have the authority to put it on the ballot just for the municipalities.
Is that a state constitution issue?
No, it's just the way that the marijuana bill ended up being written was that counties could put it on the ballot for the tax, but it doesn't allow municipalities to do that. So we're just dependent on the counties deciding to do it.
Yeah.
Every year in the session, I've put forward some sort of local option to available to municipalities or counties. And I do so because I've seen the success here in Whitefish. I've learned the worst thing I can say is even mention Whitefish in the conversation at the legislative level. And it's not that people don't like it, but they don't necessarily want to be like Whitefish. But what I do suggest to people is if there's such thing as a painless tax that seems to look at more luxury items and tourist-based items, and that is designated for infrastructure project and very transparent, and you can see the difference after 20 years. And so I think what it does, and maybe with the marijuana issue too, it brings up some of the clash between rural and urban areas and maybe different philosophies. And I think it's a really good idea to be looking at this potential modest selective statewide sales tax that revenue is looking at, because I have been over the years a proponent of better ability to match how our economy works to how we collect taxes. And, you know, if we're sort of looking at old legacy industries and mining that we don't have anymore, I think our new legacy industry, whether we like it or not, is tourism. And I think one way or another, sooner or later, we've got to figure out a better way of collecting dollars from tourists who are more than willing to give us the money. We just have to figure out a way to do it. And so, you know, a refundable 1% sales tax to some low-income folks and having the ability to collect more, and then doing property tax relief or money to housing, et cetera, would, I think, be a good step forward.
Thank you. That seems like a really good place to end, because we are concluding this panel at 10:30. And I think if there's, well, if we had the tourism administrator on here, they might disagree. But one thing that seems like we can all agree on is that there are a lot of visitors coming to Montana to spend a whole lot of money every single year and multiple times a year. And it's an opportunity for us to maybe get some relief in other ways. So I'll leave it there, because I think there's lots of great ideas. One thing that I wanted to mention is that the call to action that you heard from folks on this panel, they mean it. They really do want to hear from you. And the legislature, the easiest way I can point to it is just go to ledge.mt.gov, I think. It's saved in my favorites, so I don't actually memorize that. And to basically find out what the schedule of activities are. So you do have the opportunity to put together thoughts, especially from an informed perspective with your sector, and thinking about ways in which our legislators can not only learn from examples of lived experience, but then also suggested ideas and things they could actually potentially take to the drawing table. Thank you, Kelly. So one of the things that is included in the session HUVA website today is a calls to action. And I put together just some things that you've already heard already. There's also a link there that's just called Elected Officials USA Gov. And when you go to that website, you can find how to contact all of our federal senators and congressional delegation, as well as state representatives, both in the House and the Senate, and of course the executive, the governor's office. So I highly encourage you to connect with legislators and in your area, so you can find out like who is my House representative and how to contact them, or who's my senator, and also your city and your county officials. They need to hear from you, whether you have good ideas or whether you just have a concern, or both. They need to hear from you. And how and which can you engage with other folks? In this calls to action document, we gave some examples of volunteer groups in the Missoula community that have stepped up and are trying to help people find an affordable apartment. They just kind of help them maneuver through the application process. That might be going on in your community. There may be ways to just connect with your neighbors. And ultimately, I would encourage us all to continue to have conversations with our neighbors. It's a contentious issue. Change is hard, and ultimately it's here. Montana has changed for the foreseeable future, and what we all thought was our Montana home has changed a bit. And let's make sure that we like that change and that we help folks continue to have safe and healthy homes and economic prosperity for us all. So with that, I want to thank our panelists so much for your expertise, your time, and your dedication to public service and strengthening Montana and your local communities. And I just want to thank again the NeighborWorks staff for all of the support that you're giving in order to have these conversations. Is there anything, Katie, that you'd like to conclude with?
Yeah, I have to conclude with a few things, and we have some raffle prizes to give away. So we're going to go a couple minutes long. But first, I just want to thank Kelly, Kevin, and Andrea, and I want to thank Representative Fern and Representative Welch. Representative Fern and Representative Welch have been great advocates for this work in the state for a while. In fact, they were some of our first recipients of our Legislator of the Year Award. So we just really have appreciated what you have done and what you continue to do. And I want to thank you again to First Interstate Bank for your sponsorship and support. As Kelly said in that session, we are in a brave new world and innovation is key. And I hope that over the next 2 days, you find ways to innovate and that you are inspired by different ways that we can help solve some of the really big issues that we've got going on. We quickly want to highlight for you what is to come in the conference today. Our first set of breakout sessions will start promptly at 11 a.m. and are 1 hour long. The second set of breakout sessions will start at 1 p.m. Some of the 1 p.m. sessions will be 60 minutes and some of them will be 90 minutes. So please take note of this in the agenda. We have structured a 30-minute break now and an hour break between the 2 breakout sessions. This is to give you time to get up from your computer, stretch your legs, and come back refreshed for the next session. Each session has its own Zoom link, so please, please, please refer to Whova throughout the day to get those individual session links. Remember the challenge Kaya posed at the beginning of our session this morning. Ask a question, share a resource, share your perspective in the chat. Remember to select all panelists and attendees when you do that so everyone in your sessions can see what you post. There's been great conversation in the chat. Tomorrow morning, we will gather at 9 a.m. to recognize and celebrate this year's award winners, followed by a great morning plenary session where we'll view a 10-minute short documentary film and have a conversation with Sarah Terry, the filmmaker. Again, all session information and links are on Whova, and the easiest way to get to the links is to click on the agenda on the navigation buttons on the left side of the Whova conference homepage. Then scroll to the session you want to attend, click on View Session, and then join the live stream here. If you are looking for a great way to spend some of your break time today, we have a nomination for an organization for the People's Choice Award. If you haven't made a nomination yet, you can do so by using the SurveyMonkey link in the chat. We will accept nominations throughout the conference today until 3 p.m. Nominees must be a nonprofit organization, not individual or for-profit company or government entity. We currently have 35 nominations. Tomorrow morning during the awards ceremony, we will share the full list of nominees with you and open the voting. Every person registered for the conference will get to select their top 3 choices for the People's Choice Award winner. The award winner will receive $3,000 to support video production of a video about their organization or a program they're working on. Before you grow though, we want to do 2 quick raffle prizes for attendees, and we want to draw, actually 3, for 3 names now. You don't have to be present to win, but we hope you will be. And we will also be drawing names at the plenary session tomorrow morning and tomorrow after. So quickly bring up our wheel of names. Maybe, there we are. First winner, you are all entered. First winner is Madison Fernandez. Madison, we will get a prize off to you. We've got 2 more winners coming up. You can do the little wheel of names dance. I don't know if there's a dance that goes with that, but we'll make one up. Second winner is Jeff. Jeff will have a prize off to you. Congratulations. We'll do one more quick one. Last winner is Cody. So congratulations to all our winners. Michelle Rogers, our amazing conference guru, will have those off to you. We do hope to see you in person tonight from 4 to 5:30. Again, you can find information on all the networking events on Whova and the agenda or the meetup section of the community tab. In Whova, there's a leaderboard and a photo contest, also with prizes. We are running again this year, so please participate. Tonight would be a great time to snap some pictures and post those to Whova. If you are also sharing posts on social media, please include the hashtag Montana Housing Conf. Enjoy your breakout sessions today, everyone. We hope you learn a lot and we can't wait to hear all about what you have learned. Have a great day.